Cover kind of two pieces in one fell swoop, right? Okay, in one fell swoop. First, he's going to
make you nervous, Chris.
Yeah. First, talk about weed management trials, and then about his sabbatic in Scotland. So,
great. Thanks, Chris. Way to go, guys! It's getting close to the end, and you're still here. Well done. I want to talk to you a bit about a couple trials we had going on this last year, and some of the data from the previous year. Focusing on raspberry, and then I want to talk a little bit about blueberry, and then I'll get into the Scotland stuff just for gee whiz fun. The first thing to visit with you about are the raspberry trials. Now this is some work we did at Daryl's place. Daryl, where are you? Hi, Daryl. Thank you very much. He gave us some Nootka to play around with, and we did. Steve Midbow said, well, we got some quackgrass out here somewhere, and so we found the quackgrass. We kind of put the plots out, hoping we would get a lot of quackgrass in the plots. Of course, it was a great plan that didn't quite work out. We ended up with a few plots that had quackgrass on it, but Daryl, you need more quackgrass. I'm working on it. I'll get that for you next year. I want to visit with you about some of the newer herbicides. Now, these are not registered products, so Val from WSDA, be sure and stop your watch, because I'm not going to be talking about the registered products now. These are ones that are coming down the pipeline and hopefully will be available to us within a few years. The first one on the list here is Allion. This is a product we've been looking at in all berry types. It's a Bayer product, is currently registered in some nut crops as well as in some fruit crops, like and certainly in apples. Very long-term product. It kind of stays in the soil for quite some time, but it's one of those that you have to get out there to the pre. In other words, it's really got to be out there for way before any germination has happened in the annual weeds. We don't know about the perennial weed control. I'm understanding that they're seeing some suppression, so we wanted to keep looking at this in multiple year kind of things. But that's one of the products we're looking at. The second one here, quinclorac, is a product that has been around a little bit a while, fairly famous for being able to control bindweed. And this is the convolvulus type bindweed, the calistigia, the big white flowers that we have out there that twine around things. Pretty active on those two species, field bindweed and hedge bindweed. We also see some activity on Canada thistle and some other Asteraceae kind of plants. So I'm working with Ed Peachy at Oregon State to try to see if we can get some registrations for this product in raspberry in particular, because we're kind of concerned about that one. This next product is Trevix. It's sold under a lot of different names in a lot of different crops, but this is what they've settled on for orchards and also be for berries. The saflutinacil is the name of the active in it. Trevix is, we've looked at it a number of years. It's going to be a great cane burning product. Does a great job on that. Very similar to Goal in its activity and in spectrum activity. I think it's a little bit hotter than what we see with Goal or with AIM, frankly, at the rate that I've been testing. So we've got a little rate that we can maybe give up on it, but it's really quick as far as the burn down on primicanes. But we get a little bit of residual to it, but that's probably the rub on this one, is that it doesn't stay very long in the soil. So maybe a mix of Allion and Trevix in the future would be something we could really go to town on. This product, Zeus, is sulfentrazone. Many of you know it as Spartan in strawberry world. It's a product that we've got quite a little bit of information on, but we don't have a lot of it in raspberry work. And so we wanted to test that, and the FMC guys were interested in looking at that. So these were the four products we have not registered at this moment, and we were testing it with other products that we do have registered. So we're looking at Callisto, looking at Diuron, Gramoxone, Simazine, and Sinbar, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So these were a series of 26 treatments that we had out with these products, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what some of those results were. Then I also looked at a trial there at the site. We were looking at Matrix. Now Matrix is a fairly new registration for raspberry, And its big plus, the reason we were after it was for quackgrass control. It works pretty well pre-emergence, which we thought it would fit pretty well into our mix of things. We got it in blueberries as well, but raspberries is what we were kind of worried about because the primocanes also show some symptomology for it. So what we did here, working with Norm McKinley at DuPont, was to set up a trial where we looked at matrix applied pre-emergence or before we saw any growth out there, applied at cane burning time, so early April, after we've had some of the primocanes starting to grow, either with or without goal or aim applied. And then we put it late season, about 3-foot tall primocanes, because I'd had some plots out with Randy Honkoop a few years ago where we put it out at that timing and really spanked them pretty hard. It was not a good thing, and so we wanted to get an evaluation of whether that would work. The current registration is strictly pre-emergence or pre-bud break. You have to get it out there early, at least in raspberry, but we wanted to see what these other timings would do for us. So we ended up with 11 treatments there. So this is the timing that we did. The dormant seasons were applied in mid part of March before we had really much going on out there. Cane burning was done April 11th, and then those late season 3-foot tall primocanes were applied at the end of May. We looked at weed control, and then we also did one picking, just kind of a sampling of the berries to get a sense for did we really whack things out there on the site. So rather than show you a lot of different things, I decided to lump all these together. So all the treatments that had Allion in them, we had 7 different treatments out there, are included in this graph. I had 7 different matrix treatments. I had 8 different quinclorac treatments, 6 different Trevix treatments, and 4 different Zeus treatments. And you can see the level of weed control we got at the dates that I did the evaluations. This was from the April applications, from the March applications. So this would have been during the dormant season applying. The June 13th ones were from all of the previous applications, okay? So they might have been done pre-emergence, it might have been done at cane burning. And then also the quinclorac had not yet been applied in April. We applied that at the end of May. So by June, that was the effect of those quinclorac applications. Now what I found very interesting here, at least in my book it's very interesting, the level of weed control we got from all of these kind of thrown together, the range of control was very, very, very good. The poorest that you can see on this chart, the poorest was with matrix by itself, applied early, only 81% weed control. 81, that's pretty good. We did very, very well with these treatments. If we mixed them up, we put them in with other products, almost 100%, almost all the time. So check it out here as far as the Allions, 97 to 100. Even by June, we're still at 95 to 100% control if we had Allion in the mix. So these kind of numbers really tell me that we've got a lot of good products coming down the pipeline. Using them in either combination treatment or in sequence treatment looks like it's going to do a very good job for us. Now, one of the biggest weed problems that we had at the site was common groundsel, and that's one blows around all over the place. So its potential to move during the growing season was pretty high. So I was really pleased to see these levels of weed control on into June, because most of those, a lot of them maybe hadn't even germinated at the time we were doing those applications. So the longevity of these treatments, I think, speaks well for the herbicides involved. So I have very high hopes anyway for all of these products. Matrix, as I said, currently registered. These other 4 are not yet registered. Now, to give you a little more information on the primocane stuff about Matrix in particular, here's kind of what I saw out there. If we applied Matrix as it is currently registered prior to emergence, no injury to primocanes. They came up afterwards just fine, like you would expect them to be. And we did not see any slowing of the primocane regrowth. So after cane burning with aim or goal, they came back just fine. So I think Matrix, as it is currently registered in raspberry, shouldn't cause us any problems, at least based on what I'm seeing in plots. The second timing here, when Matrix applied alone at cane burning, because we've always thought Matrix slows things down a little bit, and if all we want to do with cane burning is slow the primocanes down, then let them regrow at a time later on down the road, would that be a good thing to do, rather than cane burning to remove them completely? We wanted to get a sense for that. Well, if we did that, we caused about 55% primocane burn, if you want to think of it as a burn. These were symptomatic plants, very short, kept them stunted for a long time, but it was only about 55%. Now, I like to think we're going to be at least 80% or more on a burn before we really get a good effect from the primocane management. So I think we need to be hotter. So I don't know that matrix applied at this timing is going to be enough. We did see some new primocane regrowth because we did apply matrix alone, but we also had some that applied with a cane burning product. And when we did that, we did not slow that primocane regrowth at all, which is encouraging there. The weed control was very good with those kind of sequential applications as well. If you look at matrix 3 foot tall, I think we got a bit of a problem on this one. It's up to 13% primocane burn 2 weeks after that application. It wasn't quite as bad as we saw at Randy Honkoop's a couple times, but it was high enough that I think we're probably not going to want to go that late. It's not a good thing because I think post-emergence control of quackgrass would be a good thing to do right before we get into the harvest season. However, with that kind of burn, I don't think it's something we're probably going to end up doing. Now, as you can clearly see from these slides, sorry, this is what we saw here. It's kind of a reddish, yellowish color, not actively growing, but that would be the 55% control of burn that we were seeing, so that didn't really help. If you look at primocanes themselves, we did get some yellowing here. This is the top of a cane. You can't really see it too well, but you can see that the bottom part is kind of yellowed up and the top part's kind of stunted. So that's the kind of burn we got. It wasn't 100%, wasn't all the primocanes that way, but it was enough of them that I think probably is not going to be a label change that we're going to want to approach with matrix. Other observations in the plots, we did not see any reduction in berry yield from any of these applications, so that's encouraging. Fruit size was also quite good. No significant differences among the plots of the treatments that we were using. There's some concern about Callisto on raspberry. I kind of share that to an extent. I've not seen a huge problem in plots from Callisto, but I know there's been some whole field treatments that have caused some issues, and so usually we see regrowth being okay, and in this case we also saw that. But I saw a little bit more of the symptomology on these primocanes early than I expected to see. So on this site, pre-emergent, prior to bud break, Callisto, we were still seeing up to 27% of the primocane leaves bleached. So it tells me that there's something going on. We often see it on other crops where they turn white for a while and then they recover and everything's fine. But there may be some cases out there where the Callisto could be causing a little bit more damage than what we would like to see. As I said, I've used it in plots down in Skagit County and not had any problems at all with it, but I know that there's been some issues. So if you use Callisto, you'll definitely want to be pre-emergence, definitely pre-emergence, pre-bud break. I would say you do small amounts of the field until you're comfortable with it. And this is for raspberry. Now our raspberry primocanes, they appeared normal afterwards in these plots, and as I said, we didn't see any yield response, and primocane growth was normal after that. The quinclorac applied in late May, we did see some leaf foliage effects. Now, quinclorac's like a 2,4-D, it's like a Stinger, it's like some of these other products that kind of twist the leaves up a little bit. There's a very low level of effect. Only about 5% of the primocane leaves showed this twisting on it. So, and that was at 2 weeks after. You would expect to see it before then. So I was very positive about this. Now, the quinclorac, as I mentioned, primarily aimed at field bindweed or hedge bindweed control, and I think this is going to be a winner for us if we can get it to the registration stage. But as of right now, we're still generating some information down in Oregon as well as up here, and once we get that, I think it's going to be a good positive thing for us. So let me just conclude up with the raspberry part. I'd say all of these still are high priority in my book as far as getting ultimate registrations. We do have Allion and Trevix in the mix for IR4 testing this coming year. So we're going to get residue data this year, and usually it takes a couple of years to get out of IR4, and then another up to a year, seems like, with USDA before we able to, or with EPA before we're able to get the registration. So we're probably about 3 years out for these in raspberry. Zeus, FMC is pursuing this separately for Zeus, so we should see them move forward with their own residue, which means it'll go a little bit quicker. I suspect we're going to see Zeus in about 2 years. We'll probably have that new registration. Quinclorac and Trellis likely will be included in IR4 the year after next, so in 2015. So again, do the math, and it's going to be a few years down the road. But these are both good products for us. Trellis I didn't talk about. It's a similar product to well, it's the same product as Gallery. So if you've used Gallery and anything else, you know it kind of fits our weed spectrum pretty nicely. So I think this might be a good one for us as well. Now I should mention that Sandia, we should see registration in a couple of years with Sandia. February, like next year? How did you get that fast? Well, anyway, we'll talk later, but the Gowan guys are saying next February. Sandia is going to be quite comparable to Matrix. I assume the label is going to be the same, pre-emergence only. We have kind of hit primocanes late with that and seen issues. The big plus of Sandia, I think, is we're going to see some suppression of some of these perennial weeds, but in particular, we were aiming at nutsedge for this one. So if you do have yellow nutsedge, this is going to be a good product that's going to help you out with that as well. So that's kind of what I have for raspberries. Any question on raspberry before I go to blueberry? Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you noticed in your testing, like with the gramoxin, I find that on some of the test rows that I left, that my laterals were shorter, so that actually there was a little bit of uptake in the established berries. And so in your testing, do you know whether it's a berry count or whether it's a lateral length or anything, does that kind of harmonize with it?
The question about gramoxone and does it translocate at all? Do you see translocation with gramoxone? Typically, no, we do not. It's such a quick burn that it usually kills the cells that are contacted by that herbicide. Because it would have to move in phloem, it breaks down very rapidly, and so you see it just stay put. Probably if you're seeing shorter laterals, it'd be more due to misting or some escape due to more of a drift kind of thing from the nozzle up into the canopy. That could certainly shorten some things up, but usually what you see is a kind of a speckling of the leaf from that kind of application. Yeah, if you're not seeing that, I think the gramoxone is probably not affecting things as far as lateral length and such as that. Other questions before I move on to blueberry? Okay. So, blueberry trial. I've got a couple of years of data I want to talk to you about. This was done up here in Linden, and I didn't put your name on here. The lovely and gracious Craig Ford put me up to this and said, we've got some new draper. Have we got a deal for you? I planted the draper. It was in November, and I went out later on in March and said, let's do some of these treatments on brand new, freshly planted plants. So we wanted to get a sense for, do these herbicides really give us any problems on these very, very young plantings? So kind of, again, the focus that we were aiming at was some new products down the road. So we wanted to look at Allion for sure, and Trevix, which I've already talked about. This other product is a new product, but it's not a new product. Oh, Chris is here. Hi, Chris. The Reflex is fomeciphin. It's been around for a long time in soybean production. We've looked at it in a number of crops locally, and we really started looking at berries just a couple of years ago, strawberries and raspberry and blueberry. So we wanted to get a sense for how well is it going to fit for us in blueberry production, and so we wanted to put it into the trial here as well. If you look at the timings that we had on, I've got both years on here. So we kept the same plots. They've been in the same plot for two full years. The dormant season applications and the post-bud break applications were the two timings that we did on these. In 2012, it was done in early March and also in 2013. Notice either late April or early May for the post-bud break applications. Now, most of these are combination treatments. We do have a few single application kind of products out there, but most of them were more than a single one. Now, all my charts here from here on will be somewhat like this. And so what I've got here are the herbicides on this side. The different colors represent the different herbicides we put on. And the bigger the bar, the better the weed control. So you want to look for big bars in here. And what you can notice is that these first four treatments, Sandia, Stinger, Callisto, or Matrix, are on the left-hand side for our pre-bud break application timing, and then these same products post-bud break. Statistically, not a huge difference, but we did see basically poor control with these three products as a post-emergence treatment or post-bud break treatment. Matrix didn't make much difference. We saw very good control either pre or post. Notice that by May, anyway, these were applied in March, and we were sitting around 80%, 75-80% weed control from single application, single product. Now, when we started mixing them up, putting out these two-way tank mixtures, in this case, Sandia, Matrix, Sandia, Callisto, Sandia, Stinger, Stinger, Matrix, Stinger, Callisto, Matrix, Callisto. Overall, about the same level of weed control in May. So again, pretty good level of weed control all the way across here from all these different combinations, somewhere, again, between 75 and 95% weed control. So I think these combinations seem to work pretty well, but not a whole lot better than the single shot treatments. Three-way mixes, you look at these and you think, gosh, three-way mix, not quite as good. Sandia, Matrix, Callisto, Sandia, Matrix, Stinger, Sandia, Callisto, Stinger, and Matrix, Callisto, Stinger. But notice the difference here. The bottom of the chart is 90% weed control up to 100%. Suddenly looks a lot better, doesn't it? We're sitting here anywhere between 94 to 97% weed control. Do you like that? Is that a good number? How many would like to have 97% weed control? I do. I love seeing this. This is fantastic. So these combinations really worked well early on in this, the first year plots. Now again, this is in 2012, first year. I also put out some of these older technology products, which I thought was kind of interesting. Sinbar's been registered for a number of years. Lorax is not registered. Carmex, as you know, is registered. But I wanted to look at these combinations with Sinbar at 2 pounds per acre. So it's a fairly old chemistry, but how well is it going to work for us? And you can see that Sinbar at that rate, we're still, the worst weed control is 81%, up to 98% weed control when we had a three-way blend. So these old chemistries, I think, still offer us quite a lot. So looking at Sinbar plus Lorax, for instance, good level of weed control. I don't think we needed to go to full 2 pounds because it really didn't see any difference in weed control. We had the Carmex was a little bit better, but only 2%, so hey, not too bad. Even with the Matrix, Sinbar plus Matrix, sitting over 90% weed control. So very good level of control when we were using Sinbar in the mix as well. Now again, these are very, very young plants that we're treating. These are only about 4 months old. If you look at 2013 now, this is from this year's data. Same charts, same treatments. Now if you look at these, what you kind of come out with is that our general level of weed control from our single shot products applied 2 years in a row. Again, somewhere between 75 and 90% weed control. Still very good. Notice what happened here with Stinger though. Stinger applied, again, by itself. We're seeing it really fall off. Now, we've known for a lot of years that Stinger is kind of, I won't say it's a one-trick pony, but it works best on Canada thistle. It also controls those other Asteraceae weeds, things like prickly lettuce, or if you have sow thistle, that type of thing. Groundsel does a fairly good job on. But if you don't have those, the level of total weed control is very poor. So you have to use that product with other things. If you have Canada thistle, it's the one you're going to want to use it on. But notice that if you're using it by itself, it will fall off even within a couple of years. If you look at the two-way mixes, I think these same-way two-way mixes, 80% weed control or better. Two ways, I really like them a lot. These new products look very good. If you look at the three-way mixes, even better. We're 92% or better from 2 years in a row. So I think these are looking fantastic. I really enjoy getting these kind of results. If you look over here again at the mixes with the Sinbar, 92% to 100% weed control, and these were the cleanest plots out there. They even took the algae off the ground. You got to love that. You don't want to see green out there. The plus of all this, ultimately, is that we saw no observable crop injury from any of these treatments. These were on Draper, and I don't know if it's just Draper, but these are champs. They were coming through the whole thing looking very, very good. I fully expected, and Craig did too, fully expected to see dead plants. We did not see that. We did not see injury of any sort on these plants, and they look really good. We're going to take them through the next year, hopefully get some yield response and see whether we've slowed anything down particularly. But ultimately right now, all of these products look very good, and these newer products that aren't registered yet also look very good. So I think the future is very bright for blueberries. Quick thank yous on these things before I open up for questions. Blueberry Commission, Raspberry Commission. I didn't give you strawberry data, but I do have strawberry information from this year from the Strawberry Commission. Washington State Commission Pesticide Registration. Quite a bit of industry support. They really help out a lot. Sakuma's gave me strawberries, so I like to mention them all the time. Darrell Eller, Craig Ford cooperating on these. Herbicide manufacturers provided products for the most part, and then the guys that helped me out so much on station. So, questions on the blueberry side of things before I move on to the next thing? Yes, sir. I'm sorry to hear you.
Were you crossing over the middles and spraying directly on top of the canes?
Great question. I tried not to hit the canes as much as possible. However, it's a backpack application, single or two nozzle boom. So what I do is walk up one side, spray one side, and walk back down the other side and spray the other side. So there is some overlap in the center, but I try not to get very much on those very young canes. There is certainly some mist that does get up there. And I think anytime you have a young plant, even though he had them up in milk cartons, they were still some foliage that probably got sprayed, particularly on those post-emergence applications. Other questions on this? Okay, how am I doing on what time am I supposed to finish?
4:10.
4:10? Oh, I actually have time to talk about this.
Right?
Cool.
Maybe it's 3:10.
Let's talk about Scotland then, shall we? Now, many of you knew this. I went to Scotland in 2012, and I wanted to do some work in berries because I thought berries are cool, right? So I wanted to do some work about looking at weeds in Europe to get a sense for how things maybe are a little bit different over there. So first of all, I want to kind of break it down to you to where I was located, okay? This is the Earth, okay? So far, so good? Now, even in this low light, here's Seattle here, this is London right here. So if you draw the line, notice you get some really cool visuals out the window. And how many have gone to Europe? How many have been to Europe and flown this polar route? Isn't that cool? You look out there and see Greenland and all this. It's really nice. But it also brings home the point that the Earth is round, and that if you actually went around this, how much longer? We don't think about 3Ds, but there it is. Now, if you bring it in a little closer, here's Europe. I can't see it too well, so let me get a little closer. This is UK. UK is 4 different countries. Let's name the countries. What are the countries of the UK? Wales, Scotland, part of Ireland, Northern Ireland is, and then of course England. So these British Isles now, and Scotland may not be in there next year. They're going to vote on independence in September. So I think I started something over there. Don't know if it's going to work or not, but they're thinking about it. Now, if you look at Scotland, Scotland itself is about half the size of the state of Washington. So if you draw that cascade curtain, you consider yourself Eastern Washington, Western Washington. It's about the same geographical area that you have in Scotland. The total number of people there is a lot less, however. The biggest town is Glasgow. It's about 1.2 million. Edinburgh has about 900,000. I was up here in Dundee, which is about 150,000 people live there. Now, where I was doing my work was at the James Hutton Institute. James Hutton Institute is the former SCRI, Scottish Crop Research Institute. They combine these in Scotland and in UK generally. Less is more, less is more, less is more. And so all the administrators then moved into the one location. They do a lot of berry work here. They work on berries, they work on potatoes, and they work on cereal crops. I was interested primarily in the berry side of things on this trip, so I want to visit with you about some of the Scottish production that they do there. The first crop that I really kind of learned a lot about, because I didn't know much about it when I first left, is blackcurrant. Anybody grow blackcurrants? They're always asking me, hey, where's the production in the States? I can tell you it's not here. Maybe up in Canada, any Canadian blackcurrant. Okay, one person, thank you very much. Your check's in the mail. What we have here is a perennial bush. It's grown much the way that blueberries are. Typically, rotation up to about 10 years seems about as long as anybody leaves them in, at least at the location I was at. Generally in rotation with annual cropping. So they have barley, wheat, canola, and what they call, they use the Scottish, it's sort of English, okay, so it's the taties. And taties are potatoes for us normal people. So they do a lot of potatoes there. And then they also have neeps, which are turnips, beetroot, and various cole crops. Turnips is the biggest thing. But they also have, the usual broccoli, cauliflower, things like that. Blackcurrant, primarily it's used for this juice product. It's called Ribena. It's almost a soft drink kind of thing. And they use also they make some preserves out of these, as well as some dried fruit, dried currants. Extremely high in vitamin C, and that's really where this particular drink caught on during World War II. Germans kept some of the oranges out of the country, out of the UK, blockades and things like that. So being good Englishmen, they decided they were going to produce their own vitamin C crop, and Ribena as a drink was born. Reminds me a little bit of grape juice. Anybody had Ribena? It's okay. It's okay. It's very sweet, because blackcurrants are not. The other crops are more familiar to us. Strawberry and red raspberry. They've grown red raspberry in Scotland for a long time. They're kind of moving into the strawberries, much like Tom Walters was talking about with the tunnels. It's interesting, it's about 1,000 hectares, about 2,500 acres, primarily in the central part of Scotland, in that Dundee area, if you remember that map. It's kind of where it's primarily located. Almost all fresh market fruit. They just don't have processing to speak of. It's all based on hand picking for the most part. I love the prices. Boy, you'd love the prices there too. This 300-gram punnet sells for £2, so that was their big thing. £2 for this, £2 for that. It's about $4 a pound for strawberries that they're selling fresh market. It's all local produced. They like to have in there either the British grown or Scottish grown. And the raspberries, $13 a pound. How many got $13 a pound last year? Anybody? Yeah, I didn't think so. Boy, I can, and these are small little punts, 100 grams, quarter pound, that they're selling for this. It's amazing. They must really like raspberries is all I can say. The way that they do these, for the most part, blackcurrants are out in the field. They're all field grown, typical applications as usual, as you might expect. Raspberries has changed a lot over the years. They used to have a lot of them out in the field. Now, because of, guess what, root rot, our old friend root rot, has about put them out of the business completely in their field-grown stuff. They just don't do it anymore. Almost all of it is in polytunnels. They call them polytunnels. These high tunnels where they're growing most of this fruit. And it's about half and half raspberry to strawberry in here. This is pretty typical how they do their strawberries up on these tabletops. So it works really well for them. If you're looking, on the other hand, at the raspberries, almost all of them are grown in the bags, although they do have some that are rooted in soil just with the tunnel put over the top of it. They do the long cane production. Essentially, they buy these overwintered fluorocanes, so I guess they'd be primicanes, or excuse me, fluorocanes at that point, from the Netherlands. They bring them in, they plant them out in Scotland. They get a crop that first year, and then they'll get 2 more harvests, and that's about the production cycle that they run with their raspberries there. This is not snow. These are massive amounts of tunnels. This is near Arbroath, close to where I was located. They probably have about 100 acres underneath plastic there. So they've really gone to it in a big, big way. Almost all of it is located in this central part of the country. Now the projects that I've been working on, I did a couple blackcurrant projects I'm just going to outline for you, and then one raspberry project that I want to talk to you about a little bit. First one was looking at the herbicides. They are losing herbicides very rapidly in England. They lost casseron. You can imagine not trying to do perennial weed control without casseron can be very difficult. They've lost simazine, they've lost diuron. They're in a world of hurt, and they're very concerned about that aspect of it. So we wanted to get a sense for, if we put these herbicides out there, are they going to do us any good? And what are the effect of these herbicides on the quality of the fruit? What is the fruit like after we pick this? Looking at very specific quality constituents. So we had one cultivar out here, Ben Doreen. They looked at these 3 herbicide treatments we had. We had the non-treated, of course. Then we had a product called Stomp, which you gotta love, which is essentially prowl herbicide, pendimethalin, applied with Devernol. So they put these 2 out here was one of the treatments. Artist was another product. We call it Axiom here. It's a mixture of metribuzin and flufenicet, prepackaged mix. We don't have that in our berry crops, but they do over there. And so these were the 2 treatments that we put out there, and we wanted to get a sense for weed control, but we also wanted to check that fruit quality aspect. The second project was also on blackcurrant. We were looking at the effect of the weeds themselves on fruit quality. Is there something about these particular species that maybe changes something about fruit quality? In other words, does Canada thistle hurt things more than something like fireweed would? So we had this at a separate trial. We had in the field, we had these different perennial weeds were already there. So we just set the plots up to where these weeds were located. We had willow herb. What they call willow herb is our fireweed. Cooch, or quackgrass was another one. Creeping thistle is Canada thistle. Do you like creeping thistle better than Canada thistle? You know what they call that in Australia, right? California thistle. I like that one the best. And then we had broadleaf dock. So these are very familiar weeds. They have the same weeds there, except they're native there. Looked at yield and also at fruit quality. Then the raspberry trial, we were looking at basically the same kind of thing we do here. They still do primocane management, even when they're grown in these little bag pots. Still managing primocanes for the same reason we manage primocanes, for yield response and this lowered amount of shading that you get on the fluorocanes. So we set up a trial on Glen Ample as their major variety, where we applied these products once or twice or 3 times. Different plots, different levels of application. The products were Shark, which is the same as AIM, carfentrazone. Harvest they have registered there. That's the same as our Rely or glufosinate. We've looked at it. It's a great cane burner. We've not ever gotten it registered, but it would be one that would work well for us as well. And then we wanted to have a hand control in there because we wanted to take them off by hand to see if the herbicides themselves were maybe causing some issues above and beyond what the primocane management was. And then we had non-treated. So field work in Scotland, I got to tell you, 2012 was a great year. We had rain the entire month of May. We had rain the entire month of June and July. You guessed it, rain. I'm beginning to know why they have root rot issues, maybe. It was pretty bad. And this is the big plus. You're working in tunnels. So it's like a big umbrella. So I bet the workers just loved it there. All hand-picked. Here's some of the visuals. Here's a non-treated check. Here's what we see as far as hand pruned. You can see we've cleaned them out, just dumped them there on the ground. And here's some herbicide-treated plots. So Pretty much the same thing. Now the black currant herbicides, we did all machine harvest there. They have one shot at it. The black currant is held so tightly, it's not like ours. We can go through the raspberry or blueberry and pick many times. You get one shot at black currant, so you take it when most of the fruit is ripe. We did some hand picking in the weed trial. We hand picked it because we wanted to get a sense for right there in that 1 meter size plot to see what was going on. As far as the raspberry trial, hand-picked for 6 weeks. And this wasn't me personally, it was the cooperators crew that did the picking, and so we graded it into first class, second class fruit, and then we got weights on the whole thing for the entire 6 weeks. Looking at the results, you know, I'll just kind of briefly go through these things. They controlled the weeds. We got good control with, particularly with this Axiom on groundsel. No difference in berry yield from the herbicides. That was a big positive thing, I think, in some ways. We see that a lot here, too, where we can control the weeds, but we don't necessarily see a one-year response as far as yield. Do we see a response on the weeds if we pulled the weeds out of the different species? Interestingly, no. There was a trend toward the quackgrass reducing yield the most, but statistically, no difference. We did see a difference in the primocane management, however. 2 treatments really kind of stood out for us, either removing the primocanes 3 times or applying this Rely herbicide twice. Otherwise, we saw kind of a response where we saw increased yield the more times we cane burned for the most part, but it wasn't a statistical difference except in those 2 cases. Now, I wanted to visit with you a little bit more about the fruit quality, because what we were looking for is what is the effect on fruit quality. So we were looking for organic acids, sugars, ascorbic acid or vitamin C content on the black currants, and then also looking for anthocyanin production, the red color, and some of the polyphenols, which are the antioxidants that are present. We also looked at juice pH and the Brick score. Overall, here's what we saw in the black currant. Let me just kind of set this up. This is the broadleaf dock, creeping thistle here, or Canada thistle, quackgrass, and fireweed. If you see a red block, that means we reduced the fruit quality in that particular aspect. So notice here for the bricks or pH, we lowered the sweetness of those by having it grow with dock. And we also reduced the vitamin C content, which I thought was quite interesting because that was something that I didn't expect to see. Quackgrass actually increased the pH in the brick, so it made it sweeter. So if maybe we don't want to kill that quackgrass, I don't know. The polyphenols was generally reduced also with the fireweed. What about the herbicides? The only change was a slight increase in sugar when we used this mixture of Prowl and Devernol. How about in the raspberries? Much simpler to describe. We saw an increase in the polyphenols. The antioxidant content seemed to go up when we controlled these primocanes. How about the number of times we did it? Yeah, polyphenols we saw generally increase. The more time, if we did it once, it was as good as doing it 3 times. Same is true with the organic acids. We saw higher organic acids in the fruit as a response to the number of times we did the primocane management. So that very briefly is what we did. Here's the group that I was working with. A couple of docs from England, and Dorota there was a Polish grad student that I did most of the work with, and so two Brits and a Pole. I almost worked with nobody from Scotland. It was kind of sad. But Nikki is the fruit breeder there. She is Scottish. Simon was the lab guy, is also Scottish, and Sandra is very Scottish, and she was the field tech for Rex's program. So I'm going to kind of close it off now. Do we have any time for questions?
We've got time for one question.
Okay, well, let me point out that I want to do these same fruit quality trials here. We have a second year of this, that we got this last year. If we see the same response, like those organic acid differences in fruit quality based on primocane management, I think that'd be very good to know if we get the same effect here in the States.
Quick question for Tim. You'll be hanging out for a bit, Tim? Maybe?
I will be here, and I got some pretty pictures, but I did want to show you one thing right at the very end.
I think I
here.
saw a kilt in there.
Yeah. You gotta have that, right? I wasn't drinking much, although that was part of the fun as well. So, it can happen, a brief moment in kilts. And there, yes, there was a wee dram involved. Any questions before I leave? Last chance. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. Oh, I'm going to hold on to that picture. Real quickly before I forget, I just got to make a quick announcement. There's a white Toyota truck, and this is for anyone in the building, B84503P. It's blocking the road, so move it. Okay, so we're going to switch gears here a bit. I'm going to introduce Doug Ransom. He's instructor at BCIT, just north of here, Fish, Wildlife, and Recreational Land Management. We'll talk about a pilot study looking at whether voles are a problem for blueberry crops. So, thanks, Doug. I'll give you 10 minutes. Pointer and then forward back. Or, of course, you can use, and you don't have to get too close to that line.
I hear that, yeah, okay.
Howdy, folks. First question then is, how many people have experienced vole damage in their operation? Just a few. How many people would say the vole damage is serious? Okay, and then just how many people know there's voles there, but the damage is, it's just there, but it's not that bad? Okay, just maybe one or two. Okay, so there's quite a variety. One of the things that we're trying to get a handle on is why is it some people have serious damage due to small mammals and voles, and why do other producers have no damage? Because it seems to be when you get hit, you can get hit really hard, and other ones, the voles are there, but they're not causing much damage. So that's the focus of the talk today, is do voles damage blueberries crops? And if so, what can we do about it, or how do we get a handle on this? So the way I like to go about this is first just give a little bit of a background on vole damage. What are voles relative to other small mammals? What is good vole habitat? One of the ways to keep voles out of your place is by not creating the best habitat for the voles. And population dynamics. Why does damage happen every year, every other year, or just when does it happen? This is going to be generic information based on voles in general. The unfortunate part is we know very little about the main vole that's causing damage in blueberries, being the Townsend's vole. And then we're going to move into the monitoring study that we started in BC last year, looking at both fields and what type of damage happens, and then into small mammal monitoring to see if we can get a handle on when vole damage happens. Then also sum it up with the primary results from that pilot study. So first off, the Townsend vole. We have the fortunate benefit of having one of the largest voles in North America. They get the largest density in North America, and they have one of the higher reproductive outputs in North America. So we have it, and they're just here in this general area. And I want to point out one thing is we also have many other small mammals out in these fields. In general, and most of my information is from BC, but in BC we have 36 species of small mammals that are out there. Voles only make up about a third, or 10 species. Of those 10 species of voles, there's only about 5 that actually cause any damage to plantations, primarily forestry plantations. What I have found through the monitoring is we generally have a lot of these guys, and these guys are deer mice, and they just vary a little bit different from voles. They have large ears, large eyes, and they have very long legs, which you can't see in the picture, and long tails. Compared to the voles, have short legs, very short ears, small eyes. These guys run around on the ground as where these guys hop. These guys primarily eat seeds. They're not causing any damage to the blueberry itself. And these guys are herbivores. They're primarily eating grass. And when the grass disappears, they start eating the crop trees, both in forest plantations and in blueberry plantations. So the main culprit in this area is the Townsend vole. But again, it's only one of 5 species that cause damage, but there's 36 different small mammal species out on these sites. So quite a variety of them. So some of these vole species, the meadow vole would be found more in eastern Washington, long-tail vole here, and as well as eastern Washington. Redback voles are primarily in the forest environment, but they spill over into neighboring areas to cause damage, and the heather vole. These are the main species causing damage in addition to the Townsend vole that we have out there. They all have that general pattern, small ears, very robust powerhouse-type bodies to push through the ground. And the best habitat for the voles happens to be really heavy grass areas that have sedges. and herbaceous material. Their primary food source is grass and herbaceous material. So if you have lots of grass on the site, that's the food that they're homing in on. In forest plantations, we have found, and there's a lot more information and studies looking into forest plantations, because these guys, especially the meadow vole and longtail vole, can cause millions of dollars of damage to forest plantations. And what we've learned over the decades of studying them, you get rid of the grass and the herbaceous material, you generally don't have vole damage after. So if you burn a site before you plant it, you get rid of the grass seed, fireweed comes in, you have tons of deer, mice, and chipmunks because they're seed eaters, but you seldom get any voles. So you can't do that in agricultural lands, but in the history is controlling vegetation has resulted